Sprouzo! So are we going to combine a betting platform with a spaceship with Warren Buffett? Stay to the end to find out. Welcome to the news, welcome to the news, welcome to the news. So today we're getting a little bit wonky as we try to figure out how to connect these dots, which we laid out in the beginning of this episode, which correlates to how we're going to try to connect a spaceship. And at the same time, this is a betting platform. It's called Kalshi. So Kalshi basically corresponds to something that relates to a platform that does things, that bets on different weird things, different weird items. They bet on all kinds of strange conceptual items, like who's going to win your grandma's Parcheesi game at the end of the day. So that's the kind of things that Kalshi bets on, in essence. That's the kind of thing that Kalshi bets on. It's very strange, unique, unusual things, in essence, and they can be packaged in any form, but people can bet on them, and ultimately an outcome can be resulted from the unknown outcome being unknown at the beginning of the process. So ultimately, this also corresponds to a spaceship. In essence, we want to be able to try to make reference to a spaceship because a spaceship has many different dials, and as you know, you've got many different dials and many different levers that correspond to controlling the spaceship. And so if we're able to connect with this mindset of how to connect with getting more money and more happiness and more assets in life, then in essence, we are able to connect with the concept of having the ability to be able to try to figure out how to fundamentally use the essence of attention to connect with asset focuses, where we're able to focus on assets and use these different levers and different dials on the spaceship to be able to correspond to the different things that you can focus on, basically to different asset focuses, so that in essence all of the switches that are flipped on, because you only have so many, you've only got so many switches to flip, that so every single day you have the ability to focus on switches on your dashboard that correspond to asset dashboard switches. And then ultimately, the way that it gets weird, the way that it gets a little bit interesting is quantum physics. Quantum physics makes it so ultimately there are different packages and different connections based on the different decisions that are made. Different decisions that are made correspond to different functionality, and those decisions and those actions and those corresponding different switches and such things are actually changing, and they're evolving, and there's different conditions which change and functionally shift in the sense that there's a shifting process in this thing called life. And ultimately being able to correspond to quantum physics allows the ability to also connect with that betting website, that Kalshi betting website, which corresponds to different outcomes fundamentally shifting and changing from all different outcomes of different potential outcomes all at once. But the thing that sort of regulates the ambiguity and the strangeness and the difficulty of trying to regulate all of the difficulty and the wild unknown and ambiguity of quantum physics and the conceptualization of infinite potential is the essence of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has the mindset where he basically says if you've planted enough assets that are underpriced, in essence, that you have the ability to try to win in the game of like just trying to be more happy or getting more money, basically a little bit of both. So you've got assets that you can plant in both directions, like money assets and also, happiness assets, which is in essence corresponds to spiritual finance. Spiritual finance is in many ways corresponding to happiness. Happiness, in essence, corresponds to planting seeds that correspond to different goals to be able to blossom on their own time using natural energy. But in essence, leveraging quantum physics and Kalshi and also the spaceship mindset. The spaceship mindset is basically your own mind, your own brain, and there's only so many things you can focus on in terms of attention every single day. So you have to flip on the switches. You actually are in control, active control of the switches that you flip on in terms of the thoughts that you will allow to come through your brain, and you have the ability to filter them and turn on different switches and keep different switches that are more valuable than other ones on, and you keep those ones on, and you keep them in different equations, basically. They develop different equations, and they also develop the trajectory of your spaceship, which is also known as your brain, your mind, your body, whatever it is, because in essence you're kind of flowing through life like a spaceship is, in a certain respect. So as these different switches are turned on, it also corresponds to quantum physics, because you're sort of aligning with sort of the trajectory of the frequency of the sort of goals that you're focusing on by the different elements that sort of package up to an ultimate result that correspond to different functionalities and different results that correspond to a spaceship that's driving in a certain direction that ultimately is trying to align with quantum physics. But that's where that betting platform, Kalshi, sort of comes into play. That's where Kalshi comes into play, because you're betting on different elements and different packages and different processes that have to do with life in different peculiar ways of focusing on different elements to bet on different directions of different conceptual focuses. But that's where Warren Buffett comes into play, because that in essence is where where it's about assets and aligning with assets and aligning a portfolio with assets that in essence have the ability to foundationally align with underpriced assets that ultimately have the ability to grow. And that's like nature energy, knowing about nature energy, knowing about the direction which assets are certain of, or somewhat conceivably able to move in that direction. And then you're trying to focus on asset energy anyway, which your goals and your happiness corresponds to asset energy to begin with. So packaging those different directions of different conceptual thoughts that can conceptually lead to those conceptual outcomes is what's working in the favor of connecting with quantum physics to try to reach those conceptual outcomes by leveraging what Warren Buffett also calls stacking your asset seeds. Stacking the potential underpriced assets in your portfolio, your underpriced focuses, which obviously your thoughts, your attention are kind of free. So you have the ability to leverage that low-cost sort of mindset, that low-cost process that Warren Buffett is outlining to be able to try to stack the seeds, the asset seeds, so hopefully some of them blossom, maybe not necessarily all of them, but ultimately leveraging all three of those mindsets and flipping on those conceptual switches that correspond to limited attention in a day can hopefully fundamentally try to leverage better outcomes by leveraging all three of these angles so that ultimately the trajectory of the spaceship can ultimately align with the outcomes that are sort of favorable or favored or fundamentally interesting or aligned with a fun time at least, so to speak, by developing a process like this to be able to set goals like this. And go and look up the betting website called Kalshi, because you can just bet on weird things in life. And that's sort of the game of quantum physics alignment with the spaceship craziness also, is trying to do that something similar to that. Yeah, so anyways, if Warren Buffett is listening, I guess thanks. And then to end this on a side note, basically, we want to still, like yesterday, be trying to combine business with animals and shelter animals. We want to try to combine shelter animals and fostering shelter animals into businesses. So the businesses are able to leverage the concept of having shelter animals, be able to help promote a business, after all, so to be able to help promote a business, and then also help promote the energy of the business by leveraging animal energy and trying to leverage animals as healers, and leverage that healing energy to be able to get it into the mix of the business so that other people can help to feel that energy and help grow the business, and then therefore help the animals get adopted. So we want animals to be hired into all assets and all facets of society to replace or help replace the essence of fostering animals from shelters, fostering animals from animal shelters, to try to help more animals get adopted so less animals have to be put down or put away, and ultimately they're optimized in the process of combining their healing energy, and so they're hired as healers, and ultimately fostering can be combined with businesses and animals to help promote businesses ultimately in the short and long term. That's all for now. Thanks. Ding Tech, buy, peace, buy. Ding Tech, change for games. Ding Tech, change for game studios. Thanks again, buy, peace, buy.